We had a lot to do. And I know it's a problem, because we had problems then. But I know that's what it says now, the 6-foot fence. But like I said, that's only about 5, maximum 6 feet from the side of my house. So all I will be looking at will be a fence. So, do you have any questions maybe, or have I made myself clear, or?
You were clear.
Mr. O'Donnell, do you have any questions for Sarah?
No, sir.
Mr. Ritz?
Not for Miss Miller, but this isn't a guarantee, but I know Mr. Frank Davis was in this evening talking about potential rewording of ordinances pertaining to Emmett Gardens.
Yeah, because the lot size and everything is different than, because they were pretty much the same back then. Because when my parents moved in, there were only 5 houses in the neighborhood. That was it. And, like I said, I had to walk to school. I couldn't even get the bus because I was so close to the town limit, because I graduated from here. And, I don't know, I just think that the fence is just out of place in Emmett Gardens. It's a residential area, and like I said, I never had a problem with the doctor's office at all. I never knew anybody was coming or going. And even my son with, people coming and into his driveway and in the doctor's driveway, he sees nothing. And he's a little closer than I am. But that's my only concern, is the fence. And is it gonna be the whole length all the way around the property? If it is, you're gonna have to allow for that 10-foot easement, and that's gonna cut into some of the, close to the driveway. And if you put trees and whatnot along there, you're going to interfere with that 10-foot easement.
Mr. Golden, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney, is that okay? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Pardon me.
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the map here. I see the parcel here. My assumption is, from what's being proposed, there will be a parking area behind the building. Is that accurate?
They have not told us where they would like the parking. We do not know that.
Let's say there were a parking lot behind the building. Would there have to be a fence basically from blacktop to blacktop? Is that how it would be?
So the fence, regardless of parking,
Okay.
has to stop at the right edge of the property. So the house, down a little bit to the house. So you see the house to the left?
This house?
Yes, right there. So the front right corner.
Top corner?
Yes, it's going to go right there, down to the left,
Down to my property.
down to the left, and it stops right where. If you'd like me to come up to the board, it might be easier.
And me pointing and getting around, yeah?
So the required 6-foot fence would start at the edge of the corner here,
Okay.
go down, and stop right here. So their property is unique, and it has 2 front yards. This is First Avenue, that's a front yard, and then Main Street. So the fence must stop right there. It can taper down to 4 feet,
Okay.
a few feet before, but that all must be 6-foot fence regardless.
Okay.
But see, when you come down on First Avenue, if you look, there is a marker there, and that's where my property stops, on First Avenue. Because when it was built, it was supposed to be a 2-lane road with a walkway on all sides. And, but now that would have to be to the corner of my property all the way down. And like I said, I only have maybe 5 or 6 feet, and that's where the fence would be.
I did investigate easements on the property. The plot plan is so old, it does not include easements. So town staff cannot get involved. That would be a dispute between property owners. We do not have an easement anywhere in our records.
My question is, can they put are they going to be able to put the fence on top of the main electric and cable and all that goes down through Emmett Garden?
They're going to have to contact the utilities companies and determine where that utility easement is, if there is an easement there. Like I
Well,
said,
as long as I've been aware, and since we got it,
Right.
we were always told there is a 10-foot easement, because that's how the electric company, Potomac Edison, gets to their pole to fix it. We've had cable companies to come in, and that's the only way they can get in there unless they go through somebody's property.
sure. I'm just saying there's no record of it in the town. So the utility company will definitely have a record.
Like I said, when my parents purchased it, it was not in town, so it probably wouldn't show on anything.
Okay, thank you.
I imagine the owner or the new owner who takes it's going to have to, before they put the fence up, will have to go through and, with the deeds and stuff to go through with easements. Wouldn't that be on the easement on the deed? Because if the main pole lines go down through there, I don't know how.
Utility
Main
companies.
pole line, because when, like I said, I'm 12. If you come to my lot and see, across the street where the Baker House is, you'll see a light post. And if you follow that light post all the way to my property, the end of my property on the right, that, of course, that's my property too. And that's the only way the electric company, or if they're working on the line, the pole, can get in, is using that easement.
The burden on the easement's going to be left up to the private properties. It wouldn't be anything that the town would get involved in.
Mr. Ritz?
As I was alluding to earlier, again, it's not a guarantee. I know Mr. Davis asked for that for future consideration for Emmett Gardens. I know we have ordinances, and I can't for the life of me remember which ones they are, but they call out specific areas of town. And I can't remember what it was, but I know for a fact I think it referenced Silo Hill and Brookfield and Pembroke Woods. What's to stop us from, regarding the zoning for business? What's to prohibit us from adding something regarding the fence that, okay, for all B1, whatever I can't remember, B1, obviously it needs a 6-foot fence, excluding those at a such location.
I mean, I think that's something that, staff would have to look into, but I think you want to maybe not encourage, those requirements, those buffer requirements are there for a reason. I mean, Dollar General was required to build their fence and put up their vegetative state to block the noise. Right now, you have a doctor's office going in, I hope it survives, I hope it lasts for 50 years, but if it doesn't and you're allowing these commercial usage, you may have a convenience store, a liquor store, anything like that come in there, and then that puts a different spin on the people that are living there. They may want the fence at that point. I don't know.
And I think Mr. Davis was referring to accessory structures, and staff is really cautious on spot zoning. So if they would only be allowed in Emmett Garden or not be allowed in Emmett Garden. So that's
I understand, but
And those
we
are
we currently do have spot zoning though. I know it's in there. I apologize. I can't remember which ones. I know there was a few references. I don't know if anyone else can back me up here, but
If it does, I think at this time, that's probably, if it makes its way to agenda, it would be something that, has kind of touched the surface here. We began conferring, I believe, our town attorney was president of that meeting. We'd have to seek guidance from them because there are legal ramifications to spot zoning and you may not be allowed to do it.
Understood.
And obviously we don't, zoning can be a very touchy area. So before we would entertain that, we need to look into it further.
the zoning that we're looking at tonight, it's B1, correct?
correct. Neighborhood commercial.
Neighborhood commercial. So it could be, it's because it's a neighborhood, the business at that location can just be strictly business.
It's lower density business, if that makes sense. So it's not going to be.
Define that for me.
It's not going to be something that's really populated. So there's going to be thousands of cars that generate like a normal commercial site would, like a gas station.
So it won't be a convenience store then?
Potentially, it would require studies, which would possibly go in there. If you read you read the allowed usage for B1. Do you have that still handy?
Yes. Would you like me to read that again, Commissioner Ritz?
Yes, please.
So permitted uses by right. It's lodging, bed and breakfast, rooming houses, small scale retail businesses and service providers. Drive-through service is not allowed. Food service, such as but not limited to restaurants, coffee shops, and similar uses, either as a principal use or as one use within a mixed-use structure, such as a convenience store. Drive-through services are not allowed. Business and professional office, medical and dental offices and clinics, law offices, insurance and real estate offices, banks, finance, consultant, utility company offices, and the like, animal hospitals and clinics with no open kennels, children's nursery, pre-kindergarten, and other private schools, accessory uses or buildings, and then also the signs, which we spoke in great length about.
And 514 East Main Street right now, I can't remember because of the construction. Did they put a fence up there, correct?
They did.
They did? Okay.
And they were not required to put a fence on First Avenue. Reason being, it's the front yard.
Okay.
It's just backing up. If you see 514 to the south of that's 11, there's a little fence there, 6-foot fence on the south of the property.
The trick is, in my view, is that if we were to not require this for this property, the downside is that should more activity occur there, we don't have any means to remediate that or obligate the property owner to modify it. And that causes harm potentially to the adjoining properties, not just for action and disturbance, but also it could hinder property value as well.
I have a question. Now, Zach,
I'm sorry, Mr. President.
it requires 6-foot fence. Does it have to be solid fence?
Correct.
It can't be the
Must be a sound barrier.
can't be the iron fence, the
Mm.
6 foot tall.
No, sir.
You can see through.
No, sir.
Sound and light barrier.
Mr. Golden, sorry.
If I might add,
Oh.
Mr. President, I'm sorry.
Just why? Why the solid fence? I don't.
So this was an ordinance enacted back in 2015 by the board.
Oh, all right.
I'm not sure the purpose and the reasoning behind that, but it is an ordinance.
Mr. Blanchard, if I recall correctly, it was to be a light barrier, like headlights,
Okay.
as well as a
Got it.
sound barrier,
That makes sense.
to protect the property
Got it.
or to minimize the
property.
impact of the action on the other property.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. Got it. Light burn, over.
Well, I don't get anything from that property, but from Jubilee, at night, that's all I see.
Right to have a fence there.
And I think the fence was for behind Jubilee. Yeah, not so much where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah, the angle you're at.
But if they
unfortunately,
put a
don't
parking
want
lot there in the back, then
The
the
headlights,
lights and
yeah, the
stuff will
headlights.
be towards your house.
But there shouldn't be that, my understanding, even if some of those things, there wouldn't be a lot of traffic. Yes, there's gonna be traffic, I understand that, but there's not gonna be a lot of traffic. But I'm still against the fence.
Commissioner Butler?
If he puts a parking lot in front, does that change the fence issue at all?
It does not.
They're two separate issues. The parking requirement and the fence requirement.
Any other
And
discussion?
technically, when they do the parking, it really should be in the rear of the property, how the ordinance reads.
to- Makes sense.
So they'd be entering from First Avenue?
They could do that or possibly have a drive that goes in the back, but that would make the most sense, I believe.
There's not much space out front for
Oh.
maybe, 2-3 cars.
Commissioner O'Donnell, do you have any more questions?
Coming and going
No, sir.
to that property.
Commissioner Ritz, do you have any more questions?
Not at this time, no.
Mr.
Mr.
President, if you're done taking public comment, you may wish to close the public hearing and move on to the next agenda item, which is consideration of the topic. And then if you have further questions, then you guys can continue discussion.
Is there anybody else here speaking on the topic for the public hearing? No? Then I need a motion to close.
Mr. President, if I may, it's very important to discuss, which Mr. Clapp has informed, the mistake or change in neighborhood. The board needs to make a determination for that.
So basically, you have two findings. You can either, if you want to close the public hearing and move on, then we can discuss that. But basically, you need to either decide whether or not you're going to approve the zoning amendment. Basically, this motion includes a finding of fact recommended by the Planning Commission in an agreement that there was a mistake made during the approval of the existing zoning classification. You have basically two options. You either have to say that there was a mistake, or or a change in what the characteristics of the neighborhood are the two reasons why you can approve this zoning change, or you can deny the zoning change.
And what are
We
the,
have-
oh, sorry.
Do we have to do that while the hearing's going on, or can we close it and then go on to the next agenda item?
You're just closing the record of the public hearing, is that correct?
Alrighty. I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries. Now we're going to the fifth agenda item, which is consideration of the rezoning for the lots 10, 11, 12, and 15, which we just had a public hearing on. So do we, any other commissioners have any other discussion they want to bring up?
A quick question, just procedurally. Were we looking for a determination within the hearing or from the hearing? Because I think there might be a procedural concern that we might need to reopen the hearing. Is that accurate or no?
Go ahead, Mr. Clapp.
I don't think you want to close the hearing at this point. The hearing consists of taking of the evidence, and then you close the record as long as there's no other speakers or no other documents to be presented. Then you do, once the record is closed, then the ball is in your all's court, and you have your discussion with regard to the facts as you apply it to the law of the case. And once you've had that discussion, at some point in time, you need to make a decision. But I would point out, keep in mind that this is a rezoning. This is what they call piecemeal rezoning. I think it was 2015.
Yes.
You had your comprehensive rezoning, and in the course of that, this property was retained as residential property. As I understand it, some property to the west,
west, correct.
was rezoned to business, B1, which is what this applicant is seeking. What you need to find is that there was a mistake. And when I say mistake, I don't mean that you should have done it one way or should have done it the other way. The mistake comes by finding that had you known of facts that are brought to light here, then you probably would have rezoned it. It doesn't mean that, as long as all the facts were understood at the time of the comp plan, making your decision was just bad judgment. So what you need to do is determine, were you uneducated on certain facts that had you known about during the comprehensive plan, you would have probably rezoned this to B1. And I would also point, that's the mistake. And so that is one of the bases on which you can rezone property. I would point out also that even if you find that there is a mistake that was made, it allows you to rezone but does not require you to rezone. So you can say, if we had known all this in 2015, we would have rezoned it to B1.
Right.
But even though we find that that mistake was made, we still aren't going to rezone. That's your all's call. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, obviously. But that's your goal right now, is to make that determination based on the facts of you have heard them tonight.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If we discuss and we agree that there was a mistake made, does that grandfather in a no fence there?
No,
Or
if
it's not
if it's brought in as B1,
Yeah, no fence.
it's B1, as though it had always been B1. But as we were pointing out, you can put some conditions on that, not with regard to uses, but with regard to structures that are going to be placed on the property, such as a sign and presumably a fence, although you have other code provisions that relate to that. But I don't see why you couldn't also put a condition with regard to a fence as a structure in the same way that you could put a condition with regard to a sign. So. Those are my
Okay,
points.
I need a motion to reopen the hearing.
I'll make a motion to reopen the hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of reopening the
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, I was part of the commission that was here before when we was doing the 2015 comprehensive plan, and I know for a fact a mistake was made. I didn't have all the information that was brought out before. I can tell you that. If I'd have had the information that was missing, I would have voted a different way. So, that's my 2 cents on it. I don't know how you guys all feel. Mr. O'Donnell?
I'll hold my thoughts for a moment.
Commissioner Ritz?
I want what's best for everybody here. You know, I understand that Mr. Baldacchino would like to sell the property. As it's zoned now, though, it can only be used for residential, and that prohibits Dr. Riley or anyone else from, having a business there. So I'm still worried about the fence myself. It has pros and cons at that particular location.
According to Mr. Clamp, the fence can be a part of the conditions too.
True.
If a sign can be, the fence should be able to be changed too. And it comes up in the future.
Wouldn't we have to do that this evening, though?
Right, and
Yeah.
it's the future. We're just discussing it right now.
Okay.
Mr. Ritz, perhaps we could, if you're inclined to not have that fence, would you consider obligating the next purchaser to install it? And I don't know if we can do that. That's the thing.
That was just not to interrupt, that was just my question to John Clapp, that if you grant these conditions for this zoning change, does that follow everybody else behind them? And that's a question I just asked him because I don't know the answer to that.
It seems it would. I mean,
I-
my instinct says that yes, intellectually, we would have to give everybody that option, and that means if we want more retail, for example, elsewhere in town, then no privacy fence goes in, and that's kind of a risk. And it's unfortunate, and it is unfortunate.
I agree. Can we confirm, though, that B1 neighborhood commercial requires the 6-foot fence?
It does.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Section 17.20.090, commercial district buffer.
So anything labeled commercial.
Correct.
And that's the type of fence that was put in with Dollar General. The
Correct.
Most recent
I
construction.
mean, that I can understand. That's not
the
neighborhood.
neighborhood behind it, yeah.
And it's the same as the neighbors. I don't know the name of the business, but they have a fence directly beside the Baldacchino property.
Harrington's.
Harrington.
Oh,
Okay,
Harrington's.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think of
They were
Dollar General,
514.
there's two houses, one's occupied, one's not. If you're facing Dollar General, right next to it, and then there's ones behind it. So it is the same zoning that you're looking to implement now in Emmett Gardens.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop talking right now.
Commissioner Buckman?
I was just thinking to our previous possible future agenda item. The Emmett Gardens is very particular because the lot sizes are smaller. The spaces between the houses are not to the current code of Emmetsburg. So I know this is very complicated, but I really do think because of the structure of Emmett Gardens that it should be probably considered with different kinds of zoning laws. But I don't know what that would be or how that would be implemented,
Right.
or maybe what other communities do for those 1950 neighborhoods, because all of them are very similar in structure to Emmett Gardens.
Basically, I think what it would take at this point would be direction from the board that you direct staff to look into this issue, because ultimately it's going to have to go to the planning commission for any recommendation, and it's never been on the agenda item, so I think it's best that if there's direction from the board that staff should look into this, then we will, at this point. I think that's the best way for that request.
I think that's a
But the
good-
request we have tonight is, are we changing, I mean, are we going to grant,
Go from the
B1
R1 to
zone.
B1.
Mr. President, if we were to direct staff for that, would we also direct the staff to determine an appropriate size, signage size, sorry, with that?
we could staff, give us some kind of sign
A proposal, perhaps?
proposal for how big of a sign we would allow for that area, that it wouldn't be,
If you make that part of your motion, yes. And I believe Mr. Clapp has some further information on
go ahead, Mr. Clapp.
your request.
I'm looking through your code, and it also provides that board may, upon the rezoning of any lands, retain or reserve the power and authority to approve or disapprove the design of building, constructions, landscaping, or other improvements. So as I read that, as part of if you were to find, one, that yes, there was a mistake made, two, all these other provisions, and you're supposed to look at things like, you know, the effect on population, the effect on schools, the effect, you know,
Okay.
on the comp plan. But if you were to do that, I think you could also then retain and reserve the power and authority to approve or disapprove future structures on the property, such as a fence, or lack of a fence, or a sign, or the size of the sign. So I think there's some authority in the code for that, if that were made part of your motion.
Tim O'Donnell had some concern about it then setting a precedent for other new businesses. How would that interplay with that?
Because we're,
Well, I think I said it in earlier hearing, that there's precedent and then there's binding precedent. So anything you do is going to be precedent. Now, whether you did it one time, that doesn't require you to do it the second time, if there's a good reason for you not to do it the second time.
Okay.
Every case is gonna be different, so there's precedent in that, yes, you did this in this occasion, but it doesn't mean you must therefore do it in every subsequent occasion, assuming that there are legitimate reasons for diverging from that precedent.
And that would be staff's concern, that now each new business or each new property coming in then would try to make this appeal or go to the Board of Appeals because we've granted one change, which is, it's always an option. And that's just staff's concern now.
Maybe we can have some stipulation as to which type of change and for what reason it would be considered. So in other words, considering the closeness of the neighbors, considering the type of community, so that, you know, if we had a larger, like a IHOP or a Denny's come in, that then, if it wasn't right abutting neighbors.
Right, I think we would need something more concrete than that. I mean, I think you can make the recommendation today for this zoning, but just know that it does open up the door to others to make the same plea or the same challenge. I don't think we can base a zoning change solely on the usage. I think that could lend to some problems in the future.
but according to the
I-
code,
Go ahead.
according to the code he was just reading, we could change each business or each, time we change it, we can, it's gonna be different.
But that's only for a zoning change. This is only
I meant
because
for
it is
the,
a zoning change that you can do this. if, say, a business comes along and isn't asking for a zoning change but does not want their fence, that would then have to go to the Board of Appeals, and they would have to prove why they shouldn't have a fence. And then the burden of proof is going to be on them to the Board of Appeals. And part of their argument could potentially be, and I'm not saying they would, that you granted it at this use.
You would have to prove hardship too.
Mr. Sweeney, a quick
Other,
question.
wait a minute, I have one more.
I'm never going home.
What happens if there's an easement and we're not allowed to put the fence there? Would that be a problem?
They would have to push the easement back, or push the fence back past the easement. So it would still be required, just outside the easement.
Mr. Sweeney, just a thought, might we consider talking about the mistake piece to finish that and then go to potentially adjusting things related to a zoning change? Like, do we want the board to vote as to whether a mistake was made in the process?
Okay, I will respect mine, Commissioner.
Do you want me to make the motion?
Glenn,
I'm good.
he's good. He has, yeah, you go ahead and make the motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept that there was a mistake made in the original comprehensive plan in 2015. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Is
Is that what you need, Steph?
that right?
You need anything else in it? A fact? Maybe you should read this. Read this here.
need to make findings of facts.
Okay, so how would that say?
A specific
It's the-
mistake we need to identify.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about the facts of the case, what facts you're relying on, what was the mistake, how it affects the various factors in the code, and make those findings of fact, and then make a conclusion as to whatever your decision is.
If I may, Commissioner Buckman. If I may, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Buckman may find the finding of facts from the Planning Commission's recommendation, if that makes it easier. They found specific criteria for finding of facts,
It's on,
and I did include that in your
Yeah.
memo.
Yeah, that would make
Right
it
here.
easier.
It's
Which page?
page
But I-
20 of 31 in your packet.
20th paragraph, which?
It says
Finding of fact, second paragraph, I'm sorry, on
Oh.
page 20,
On page 20, second.
right? Is that correct?
correct.
yeah.
And you're probably going to,
And then they address them all down here.
It's number 1 through 6.
that's not the reason they're finding a mistake.
No, correct.
No.
And then also you'd have to make a determination of what the mistake was. The Planning Commission found that there was a mistake in the 2015 comprehensive rezoning that the Board of Commissioners relied upon. They didn't have the correct information. They didn't know that it was a dental office. So it was no fault of anyone. It wasn't a fault of the staff or the board. It was just unknown information.
Can you take it, Tim?
Do you want to withdraw your
you go ahead and
motion?
do it. Go ahead.
Do you want to withdraw that?
I'm withdrawing my motion. I'd like someone else to do that.
You gonna make a motion?
I'll take a crack at it. I'd like to make a motion acknowledging that the Board of Commissioners made a mistake in 2015 upon approval of the town's comprehensive plan, in that due to a previous dentist office being located at lots 10, 11, 15 in the western half of lot 12 in Emmett Gardens. Was it? I said a previous business. Therefore, the Board of Commissioners at that time should have acknowledged that the location was a commercial, rather than residential, and the comprehensive plan should have been amended as such. Does that work, Mr. Clapp?
Still need the finding of facts.
A motion has been made
I'll
Is
second that.
and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any more discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell?
No, sir.
Commissioner Ritz?
No.
Commissioner Blanchard?
Nope, I'm good.
Elizabeth? I don't have, I just want to say a little piece, not to add to it. When I was working on the planning, comprehensive plan myself, I didn't know it was a dentist office because I didn't remember it was before my time. Also, the proprietor of the property wasn't of right mind and stuff, and did not know about the planning and zoning being changed, the zoning being changed. Didn't get the recommendations and stuff for it. I didn't think they were properly notified that the changes were going to be to the property and stuff like that. And that's why I thought it was a mistake was being if they were properly notified and knew that they would have been here for that planning change when we did the planning and zoning change for the comprehensive plan. Alrighty, Glenn, anything else?
I'm good.
Let's call the vote.
I'm calling a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
4 ayes, 1 nay. Motion carries.
Who's the name?
I didn't vote that out yet.
Tim?
So basically, you just made a motion that's admitted the mistake and fact, but you still need to make a motion that you're going to allow the rezoning, and if there are any conditions.
Okay.
Do we need to read the one that was written here for the, you want it read as it is in the agenda? That's what you would like to be,
Recommended motion.
I make a
Recommended
motion that
motion.
we move to approve the zoning map amendment request to rezone lots 10, 11, 15, and the western half of 2 as shown on the revised plat of Emmett Gardens, recorded in the plat book number 3, folio 52, from R1 low density residential to B1 neighborhood commercial. My additional recommendation related to that motion is that the fencing and signage be given I don't know how to say it, future consideration from the board based upon, no, I don't know we can do that.
No, I think you need to have your.
Concrete things, yeah. All right, so let me withdraw that motion. I'll go back and let me ask. I'm looking to make the motion, but I want to see, I do think there's value to the fence. I don't know if the board would agree with that, but I think there's value as it would protect the property owner's rights adjoining it, not just the converted zoning piece, but I think it would protect the value of the property owners next to it, as opposed to losing the value without the fence. And I think the signage, if there's a recommendation from the board size-wise, not to be larger than 2 feet by 3 feet, a monument
I was
sign,
thinking.
and 2 feet, yay high, 3 feet yay wide.
Commissioner, you can actually just reserve the power for a future date. You don't have to come
That's-
up with your
yeah.
stipulations at this moment.
We don't need the concrete piece,
The
okay?
stipulations will come at a further date once things move forward. Is that correct?
Under your code, you can reserve the power to approve or disapprove structures on the property. So if you reserve that authority in your motion, then future structures to be built on the property are subject to your review and approval.
So to clarify the means, but the way we state it, reserve the authority to,
Hey, John,
the board reserves the authority to,
give me 1 second if you don't
yep,
mind.
absolutely.
recommend any
I mean, right here, I'm
changes?
reading this.
I want to hear their, I want to go with the airtight language. So that way,
We're discussing it.
yeah. I mean, we're trying to protect all parties involved to the best of
Yeah,
our
this is
capacity.
obviously a huge change. This is a big deal.
Correct.
All right.
Do we have recommended language?
Thank you. Just thank you for bearing
I'm
with me.
sorry, I thought you were done.
I am now. Yeah, you can go ahead and make the motion to approve the rezoning, as you stated. And I would simply state that as the board, where's my sentence at? You are retaining or reserving the power and authority to approve or disapprove future conditions. Is that correct?
Structures.
Future conditions, because your signs and your fence. Just leave it at future conditions.
Okay, so let me run that by you to make sure I have it properly done, because this is, we want to do this correctly. That's,
sorry.
I want to do this properly.
He's given up on us. No, kidding. Go ahead.
That's a concern. Okay, so we reserve the authority to, the commission reserves the town or the commission reserves the authority?
The Board of Commissioners
Commissioners reserves the authority to approve or disapprove future
conditions.
conditions.
And you could say such as signage and fencing.
Okay, so, Mr. Sweeney, is it okay?
That's your motion.
Is it okay if I make the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so I move to approve the zoning map amendment request to rezone lots 10, 11, 15, and the western half of 12 as shown on the revised plat of Emmett Gardens, recorded in Plat Book Number 3, Folio 52, from R1, low density, residential, to B1, neighborhood commercial. With the commission, we reserve the authority, as a board, to approve or disapprove future conditions such as signage and fencing.
Sounds good.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any other discussion on the motion as presented? All in favor of the motion?
Mr. Sweeney, sorry. Is there a timeline that we would be aware of from staff related to feedback regarding the fence and the signage? Or is that contingent upon the property owner coming back?
Right, at this point, I would put the, we don't have anything from them essentially right now, what their request would be, so I think we would wait for them to then bring what their requests are, and then staff can make the recommendation, and then through guidance with the town attorney, then bring it back to you for final approval.
Can I ask a question though regarding that?
Mr. Riss.
Would the current property owner, Mr. and Mrs. Baldacchino, be required to attend the meeting then?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, they wouldn't be required to. They can if they want. But essentially what this decision is then is not going to affect them. It's going to affect your new property owner.
Gotcha. Okay.
He would probably like to come.
Dr. Riley, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I don't have any.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries.
So, Mr. Sweeney, at this time, do we,
I need a
And,
motion to close the public hearing. Correct?
I believe, close the record for public
The
input?
record for public
Yeah.
hearing.
I would like to make a motion to close the record for public input.
I
need
can
a
second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries.
And now you need to open your regular meeting.
All right, I need a motion to open the regular meeting. Back up.
I'll make a motion to reopen our regular scheduled meeting.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. All righty. I don't think we made him happy. All righty. Next agenda item, number 6, is review of the ethics complaint procedures as proposed by the Ethics Commission.
If I would, I'll go over this. My recommendation would be to allow staff, or I'm going to go through this presentation. If you want to take it home and review it, we can always bring it back for approval. Go through it kind of quickly, if you would like. And not a lot of changes were made, with the exception of the construction of a flow chart that the Ethics Commission recommended. So little a little background. In May 7th of 2018, we made an initial presentation of the ethics code and the appeal procedures to the board. At the August 1st, and at that meeting, the board made a motion to refer the presented, per the town staff recommendation, to refer the presented procedures to the Ethics Commission for developing a procedure. The vote carried 4-0. So on August 1st, 2018, the Ethics Commission met to review the complaint procedures. The Ethics Commission recommendations, question 1, how should the current draft procedures be modified, if any? They made no changes. Town staff made a few recommendations on the changes, which actually show up on your flow chart. But no changes except to add the modified flow chart. The second question is, should the adjudicatory hearing and the procedures be public or private? They recommended that they remain private. And can the commission create a flow chart visually showing the complaint process? And they did, and you'll see the attached flow chart here. The following pages, you'll see the Ethics Commission rules for procedures for complaints and advisory opinions. These are all draft because they have never been voted on. Then a draft complaint process flow chart and our current ethics violation complaint form. So page 24, 25, and 26 basically go over the Ethics Commission's rules of procedures for complaints and advisory opinions. Page 27 was the draft flow chart that the Ethics Commission provided. And if you just look at it, I think through Ms. Shaw's research, through other MML, other municipalities, a majority of them do have a flow chart. Because flow chart, I mean, I'm visual, so it's easier for me to understand. And I think this kind of shows you exactly step by step of the process, what happens if a ethics complaint is received at our office. So basically, if somebody comes in and files an ethics complaint, they have to sign it. It gets notarized, and it's immediately sealed. That complaint is given to the town clerk. A copy of that complaint is then given to the subject of the complaint as well as the mayor. The town clerk then automatically notifies the Ethics Commission and provides them the complaint. The Ethics Commission then conducts a preliminary investigation. They basically evaluate the complaint. They can dismiss the case, and the case ends right there if they don't find any need to proceed. They can go with another action to clarify the complaint, or they request further investigation by the town attorney, private investigator, or other. After those two, they determine if there's a probable cause investigation. So they determine that there's enough evidence to proceed with a further investigation. Basically, an evidence investigation is conducted to determine if there's probable cause that a violation occurred. If they conduct that investigation and find no probable cause, the complaint ends. If they do determine there is probable cause, they can take different actions. They can resolve the complaint informally, and the complaint ends, or the case ends. If they feel that the need arises, they can hold an adjudicatory hearing to determine if there is enough evidence. If they hold the hearing and they see there's not enough evidence, the case ends. If there is enough evidence, then they write a conclusion and they submit that to the board, the mayor, the complainant, and the respondent, and possible sanctions can be issued. Sanctions include either an issue order of compliance, recommended circuit court enforcement, recommend disciplinary action, or refer matter to local authorities. And so that was the chart that the Ethics Commission came up with. And then you'll see on page 28 and 29, 28 is your ethics complaint form. That's the current one that we have had, as well as page 29, which are the instructions for completing it. And then a section for review by administration use only. And then the Ethics Commission acknowledges that they have received it as well.
Can I interject?
Go ahead.
I believe that there should be a spot in there where the person who is being accused can speak with the Ethics Commission so that so it's not just one-sided, even if someone goes to court.
That actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, where would that be?
That is actually in the, I believe that's in the adjudicatory hearing. I have to read. Maddie, where's that located? Because I know that they can go and speak to the Ethics Commission, and I believe that is,
Here.
did you find it?
No,
Well, I
don't
found
have-
what you were talking about, but I think it should be clearly stated when that person has an opportunity to.
Right, so my understanding and the way that it is that, or way it should be, is that, do you find it?
Yeah, it's under the investigation, which was letter D, and that's right after the preliminary investigation.
Letter D.
It's up top.
It says here, the respondent may, if you look at page 25, the respondent may submit to the commission, or that's the respondent.
It would be
Yeah.
it would be under the probable cause investigation. So they would investigate to determine if there's cause for the violation, and that includes interviewing the person that's the subject of the complaint.
Can we specify that in that box?
Oh, no.
It almost should be above the preliminary investigation.
Well, it's part of, that should be, that's actually part of the investigation. That's probably where it should be included, because you have the,
It may be even both spots, because that person should have a opportunity to state their
right, and it says,
thing. And then down here by probable cause investigation, at that point, if that person chooses to bring in a lawyer or a defense, then that they could do that a second time. There's a sort of informal investigation, or not informal, but
well,
not
the
as-
preliminary investigation is that's their first investigation, and they should, and if it's not written clearly in here, it should be written in here.
Maybe it needs to be in the flow chart and in the document.
Yeah,
with
right here, it
directions.
says, the persons or persons charged with undertaking the investigation of the complaint may conduct the investigation by reviewing documents or other material and interviewing witnesses, including the person submitting the complaint and the person who is the subject of the complaint. So that's in letter D. And then the adjudicatory hearing, both respondent and complaint, the respondent and the subject of the complaint should be at that hearing as well.
So,
It's under the-
I would think for
procedures.
clarity, so there's not ambiguity for the people using the flow chart and the directions, that the same letters that appear in the directions appear in the flow chart. Because it causes too much ambiguity and questions in procedure, if it's not clear enough.
I see what you're saying.
We can modify the chart. It's, like I said, it was for discussion tonight.
No, that's good.
So-
That's why I'm saying that, because I teach special ed, and when I'm doing the notes for the minutes, I have to say A, this, and then A, explain. Like, it should really, they all should be linked together so that it flows smoothly and there's not any kind of question as to what to do.
So it's both parties should be included there, in there. Your complainant and your subject of the complaint should be included in your flow chart. Yeah, we can certainly add the letters to that. That's not a problem.
That would be great.
Mr. President, I have a
Commissioner Ritz?
this might tag on to what Commissioner Buckman was stating. In letter D, Ms. Willits, when you were talking about the investigation of the complaint, may conduct the investigation by reviewing documents, et cetera, et cetera. What if that may were changed to a shall? Then everything that follows it, that would ensure that the person who is the subject of the complaint.
I mean, the subject of the complaint, they don't have to be there. That's why I think it says may. You know, if you're the subject of the complaint, you don't have to go. If we say shall, then we're commanding you to be there, and you don't have to be. So I believe in that
Shall be
context,
invited.
may is appropriate.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I think may is appropriate.
Yeah.
We don't have the authority to compel somebody to be there.
Right.
So without that power of compulsion,
I was just tagging it, tying it to the. Basically, what you were asking the individual of whom the complaint was brought forward
The-
has an opportunity to discuss, right?
Right.
I'm trying to. It's getting late. I can't
I know.
think.
And
properly.
that is the way that it's written in there, but we can certainly make sure that's very clear in the flow chart, because I believe a lot of people will be just using the flow chart.
I did.
Right.
I strike that. Thank you for
Okay.
for everybody clarifying that. I see it now.
Is there any other discussion on this topic?
do we want to take action on the recommendation by Commissioner Buckman regarding clarifying? Do we need to direct staff to do that, or
No,
is
because
staff,
this wasn't the final draft,
staff
correct?
going to do that?
This was just a discussionary thing?
It could be the final draft, but if there are comments and changes to it, it doesn't have to be.
So,
The question is, to the board, do you guys want this to be the final draft? Do you want to vote on it this evening?
I think we should see it again.
Oh.
With the updates,
Okay.
Yeah, I could
Commissioner
concur
Buckman
with
said-
Commissioner Buckman about that. Yeah.
right?
I agree.
Okay, with the changes and stuff, they want to bring it back at a further meeting?
Okay.
Okay,
Probably see it back in December.
okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Sweeney, can I just one quick question about the complaint form that we're using? At the bottom,
Yes.
we have the looks like requirement for a notary. Does that mean the person who files a complaint has to pay a fee to a notary? Or do we have a notary in office who is able to,
We don't charge a fee in office. If you come
Okay.
in and file a town form, we don't charge you a notary fee.
okay,
Now, I'm sure if they went outside the office, a notary may charge them, but if they come here, then we do have a notary.
okay, so they do have, perhaps we could add, see staff or something akin to that regarding.
Well, our
notaries.
office manager and the town clerk that receives these are both notaries.
No, what I'm saying is, in the documentation, could we say see staff, so a person doesn't feel, like, I could imagine somebody who's hard pressed for cash is gonna come in and say, I wanna make a complaint, but now I can't because I have to pay a fee to make a complaint. So if they're aware that they don't have to pay for a complaint documentation or notary, that.
I mean, I think maybe included in the instructions, we could do that. I don't know that it would be appropriate on the actual form itself, but we can certainly make a note of that on the instructions.
You don't want someone discouraged, it's like that whole bail thing that's going on. Bail for bail, they can't pay it. Okay, does anybody else want to see staff on here, or no? Is that a pass? For the notary piece,
I think if they include it in the instructions, it should be,
it's enough?
yeah, it should be
Okay.
fine.
The instructions.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this matter before we head on to the next agenda item?
Just real question. When did you say we were going to say it again? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
When did you say we might see this again?
Probably December.
Okay,
We are
got it.
quite full for November.
No problem. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
You don't need a motion to direct you
I
guys?
do.
Okay.
Oh.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to the changes discussed.
I need a second.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and second to direct staff to make the changes and stuff to the ethics complaint procedure, the new one, and bring it back at the December meeting. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Okay.
I did, aye.
Did you? Okay. I didn't hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry, aye.
Okay. Oh, where am I?
Oh, all right, I'll be louder, sorry.
Yeah, I've heard every other one.
Oh, all right.
You can use mine if you
Oh,
want.
sorry. Okay, agenda number 7, for discussion, the possible consideration request by Indian Lookout for soul hunting on use of the Scott Farm.
I believe you have
But roll call.
somebody, I would turn it over to your person that you have signed up for public comment before, I gave staff comment. Basically, I can summarize it, Indian Lookout Conservation Club is looking for sole access to hunt and fish on Scott Road Farm. In return for their to be allowed, they would, maintain and pick up the trash throughout the year on the property.
This is for discussion.
It's for discussion and possible consideration. I would recommend you have your public comment speak to it, and then I can address the staff concerns that we have for this topic.
Mr. Wance,
Yes.
can you give your name and your address?
Yes, my name's Kane Wance, 16617 Annandale Road. I sent this letter in back in, it was August 29th, 2018. I wrote this letter to Mr. Mayor Briggs. I also sent one to Kathy Willits, and I also sent a copy to Mr. O'Donnell. I'd like to read this letter. My name is Kane A. Wance of Emmitsburg, Maryland. I am writing you in regards to the town property located on Annandale Road. I have been notified that use of the property will no longer be allowed. For many years, residents of Emmitsburg have been able to make use of the land for hunting and fishing, which I have taken part of since I was a child, and I have enjoyed very much. I was devastated to hear this news. It was brought to my attention that the reasoning for the shutdown was due to people dumping trash, even littering parts of deer left behind by irresponsible people, the same people who give hunting and fishing a bad name, also trespassing and illegal use of. I am writing to prove that there are responsible sportsmen in this town. I am the secretary of the Indian Lookout Conservation Club, which is located at 17107 Riffle Road, Emmitsburg, Maryland, directly across the road from this property of interest. Our club was established in 1947 by a group of local bow hunters. They needed a place to enjoy the sport of archery target shooting and eventually started doing conservation projects in and around the town. In the 1950s and the 60s, the club even helped maintain and patrol Rainbow Lake, even controlling fishing limits and season dates. Throughout the 1970s until present, our club has done many conservation acts to ensure optimal wildlife habitat and livelihood. We even offer hunter education programs throughout the year by trained instructors and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We have planted many trees, built many bird boxes, and have given lots of people joy and happiness through sharing one of God's greatest gifts, the great outdoors. What I am proposing is that the Indian Lookout Conservation Club take stewardship of this property, which would include monthly cleanup of the bordering roads, Annandale and Scott, also in and around the duck ponds, including the pull-off spot at the end of Crystal Fountain Road. We would recycle accordingly and even dispose of waste left behind by irresponsible hunters, fishermen, and by motorists. We have done many Maryland State Highway trash pickups in the past, and this would be a obtainable solution for the problem this property has had for some time. We will notify local police and natural resource police of any crimes being committed, such as illegal hunting or fishing. I believe this would be a great solution to the problem our town's been having and help relieve pressure on the town employees and also local police. In return for our services, we would like to have permission to hunt and or fish at this wonderful location. No more than 5 members wish to have access and rights to use the property following all Maryland state and game laws. The land shall be maintained and free of trash throughout the year. I have lived in Emmitsburg my entire life and would greatly appreciate yours and the board's consideration. I would love to have a meeting with you and your board to become acquainted and further discuss my proposal and build a relationship within. Thank you, Kane Wance.
Okay, is there any discussion on the Scott Road property for the Indian Lookout? Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, how you doing, sir?
Good,
Thanks
how
for
are
coming
you?
in tonight. How many people are in your group? Just out of curiosity.
There's about 60 members.
60 members altogether?
Yep.
Okay, and it looks like from reading your document, you've been around for quite a while.
Since 1947, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Blanchard, I'll throw in, I met the board. I had a very positive experience talking to the board.
Okay.
Mr. Wance and I have talked about this a few times. I did encourage him to come in. I did explain that there is obvious no guarantee from a proposal like this based on what's caused the town to take this action. But at the same time, I thought this would definitely be a worthwhile item to consider, for the board.
Got it. Okay, cool.
I have a question to staff. Does staff have any objection to this proposal?
I have as you can see in here, we have some concerns. I met with the mayor as well as town staff regarding the proposal, and we have various concerns that are, as I kind of outlined. If you recall, the reasons why we did this were basically, as he mentioned in his letter, it's, the safety concerns regarding the property by unauthorized personnel. We were having a lot of complaints of trespassing, tree stands, four-wheelers, trash, etc. And so that, in his letter, that is correct. That was what originally brought the concerns here. I know, and I don't know if it's specifically said in here, but there's never been fishing allowed at the duck ponds, and I know that does go on, but there's never been allowed fishing there as well. You're hunting on, any hunting in the town of Emmitsburg is restricted solely to Emmitsburg residents, 21727 zip code. It's always been that way. Or you can have guarantees that that's going to still continue, that it's only going to be Emmitsburg residents. I know that we've had a few requests that claim to be part of this gentleman's club. They are not Emmitsburg residents. They are Thurmont residents that we have had problems with in the past that generated some of these concerns of why this was brought to you originally. And my concern for you as the board is you will have town residents that were denied hunting, that will continue to be denied hunting, and now you're granting use to other persons. And then, if you recall at that meeting, I think, the board gave consent to not allow hunting at Scott Road Farm for 1 year to then reevaluate. We haven't gone a year yet. So those are basically the staff concerns for that hunting, and it is going to make a little bit more difficult for your DNR and your local officials to enforce it, because we went from saying nobody's allowed there now to now you're going to grant five people to hunt there that they're going to have to identify, and so you've kind of made it a little bit more difficult on them if you grant the proposal. I know the mayor and I have had many discussions. I don't know if the mayor has anything to add.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor? Okay, just that, how are we going to tell somebody else in the Emmitsburg
217 zone,
that only these 5 guys, people can hunt there, and the rest of them can't? And I'm not sure how to do that. I know it's-
Sure, I understand. Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Let work
Go
on
ahead
it.
and go ahead. And make
Okay,
a comment.
you said only Emmitsburg residents are allowed to hunt there. I would have to.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. And Mr. Sweeney, this is
You have to
to help us.
speak towards. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
make
sorry.
comments towards us.
I would like to disagree with you because
Zip code. It's a zip code.
it's a zip code. I understand.
Okay.
But if you have a spouse that works at Mount St. Mary's or the fire academy over here or the provincial house, my understanding is that their spouse or whoever not living in Emmitsburg can get a permit to hunt there. And I know several people who have that permit and they don't live in Emmitsburg.
I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of that.
Stay.
Yeah, that's in the policy that was approved. I don't recall the year. So that was approved in the policy, but outside of that policy, it is restricted to 21727 zip code only. I don't know why the original decision was made to allow, I believe it was only, and we can go check the policy right now. It was my understanding that was restricted to spouses of the Daughters of Charity and did not include the Mount staff. But is Amy going out to check that?
I'm pulling it up on the computer.
Okay. If you give us 1 second, we can pull the policy up and give you the specifics.
Okay.
Now, would that precedent already be established if they were to rent the property and get the property insured to make sure that there was any injuries that the town wouldn't be culpable?
I don't think we can rent that property. I mean, you'd have to determine what the area is exactly that you're going to allow the hunting. You're going to have to draft a lease. I'm not so sure that that would be something that the board would want to even entertain.
That could be a year-to-year lease.
What makes this property different from the property at Rainbow Lake? In words of, as far as hunting goes.
Yeah.
I think that's a question for the board.
Yes. I think Rainbow Lake is also the 21727 number because you can't
Correct.
fish here unless you have that either. You have
Correct.
to get a license from here.
you can fish anywhere up at Rainbow Lake if you're a Maryland resident. Hunting has always been restricted with the exception, and I'm gonna have her pull the policy up, to 21727 only.
And, but also to dollar,
She's gonna look up the exact.
Policy?
The exact policy.
One more comment, if
Yes.
I might. If you get on Emmitsburg's website, if you go under Rainbow Lake, it says a Maryland resident can fish at Rainbow Lake.
yeah, she just said that.
Right. So can a PA resident, is what it says. If you have a Maryland fishing license or a Pennsylvania fishing license, you can fish there. And I mean, that doesn't go along with what you guys just said.
Hunting and fishing are two different. We're talking about two different
I agree.
sports, shall we say?
I agree, but that's what it says.
I think the licensing piece, at least on the Maryland side, kind of the question comes up, why licensing for Maryland? That gets stocked by DNR, so some of that goes back to the stocking, like that piece of it. For the hunting thing, I understand what staff's getting at regarding the concerns with the Scott Road property. I know you want to compare the apples to apples. It seems as if there's less visible abuse up on the mountain, up off Hampton Valley, than there is because it's, for lack of a better term, I think there's more traffic there, and I think that's why we have more visible litter there.
Sure.
But so I think that's, if I don't want to speak for staff, but that was kind of my take on what they had gone after. Based on the staff's recommendation is a pretty strong one, and the concern I would have is, the 1 year trial piece I definitely get. The stewardship would be wonderful, but I wouldn't want to hang a false carrot in front of the horse, so to speak. Not to call you guys horses,
sure.
but say, hey, if you guys clean up a bunch, you could get this, because I don't know that would happen. But at the same time, there is a need for it. So, I mean, I know that I get out there sometimes with family members, and we go out and we pick it up.
Sure.
A couple times a season. And believe you me, we get stuff. I mean, we get, 3 trash cans, 3 trash bags full. And then we do the whole circuit. We do the 5-mile lap. We don't get the carcasses, though, admittedly.
Sure.
We'll shove it off to the side. So I guess that's just my 2 cents. I'll just say that.
Okay.
Mr. Rich, you have any comment?
No, I mean, I appreciate Mr. Wedd's coming in. I appreciate what the Indian Lookout Conservation Club is proposing. I guess my only hesitation with it is that we're granting sole exclusive use of the land, and the way I see it would either be, all or none.
I agree with you. That letter I just wrote or read to you all, nowhere in there did it say soul. Not once in there. On your website and on the TV, it said sole hunting rights. I'm not asking for sole hunting rights. We're asking for permission. Is all we're asking for. Not just us. I mean, we're just asking for permission. That's all we're asking.
So your club then, let's say another club was interested in using the
property.
The property. Yeah, sorry, it's late. I can't even formulate my sentences tonight. Scott Road Farm. So maybe even their
Blue Ridge.
Blue Ridge or a yet to be named entity. Okay. So they would help out. Can you maybe even help out the cleanup and
well, my thoughts on that is Blue Ridge is in Pennsylvania. South Mountain is in Pennsylvania. They're not in Emmitsburg.
Yeah.
We're the only conservation hunting club in Emmitsburg. And our property is separated by one road.
Okay.
That's what separates us.
Mr. Mullins?
But
Sorry.
that-
Commissioner Blanchard.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you done?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
When did our moratorium start in Scott Road Farm?
At was it the August meeting I brought that to the board? I believe it was the August meeting.
So we're looking to go for a full year, basically.
Well, I think that was the decision that the board had
Okay.
made, that we had discussed to give it a
Okay.
year to reevaluate.
Reevaluate. Okay.
And he is correct, it is on our website that we do allow Emmitsburg and Pennsylvania fishing.
Okay.
I stand corrected on that.
I'm sorry. I'm intrigued by the idea, but I'm also kind of about the possibility of having the moratorium go through, just to see basically if we can keep it clean, and maintain it basically the way it is. I'm not opposed to this idea, but I'm also concerned with the idea that if we could keep the moratorium going for like a full year and just see basically what the land looks like, come say next year.
I agree, but here's my thought. If you drive by there tomorrow, if you go on Annandale Road and you go on Scott Road, it's you're going to be wondering what the heck am I talking about? This trash. It's pretty clean right now.
Yeah.
It is. Well, once the leaves fall off and the grass dies, which is not too far away, people start dumping trash. Deer season started September 7th,
Yeah.
so that's been in. I haven't seen carcasses or anything like that. It's irresponsible people dumping
understand.
the stuff.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing that right now. In the next month or so, you're going to see a lot of it.
Yeah.
That's when you see it. And I don't want to say it's irresponsible hunters, but it's motorists and
Yeah, exactly.
as Tim said, he picked up, cleaned the roads. I have too. We've done state highway cleanups. A lot of it is just cans and
Yeah.
trash and things like that, So,
Wasn't one of the reasons that we put the moratorium on is because there was unsafe structures that could fall and hurt somebody?
Well, we do have, there are more safety zones located on Scott Road Farm than there are, you have a much more expansive area at Rainbow Lake than you do at Scott Road Farm. You do have a house and some outbuildings and the half demolished barn that are concerns, for anybody that goes on that property as well. You're correct.
my thoughts on that too. At least while hunting, you're not supposed. Well, according to Emmitsburg, I think you're not supposed to be within 150 feet of a structure or
Correct.
fire a rifle, or I don't know how it is for archery equipment, but
I
probably the same.
I do have another question. Do we lease the property out to someone now, Crep?
Part of Scott Road Farm is leased out to
Prep.
Yeah, Crep.
Yeah.
Crep, and then you also have another portion of it that is leased to a farmer for his cattle. I believe it's a Stouter.
Gary Stouter.
Stouter.
Yeah, and we also let the
Boy Scouts
Boy
camp.
Scouts use that for camping.
How do we
Put it
avoid
there.
hitting a cow?
Mr. Sweeney, one thing I'll throw out there is, like, I've talked to the staff and Mayor about this constantly. At some point in time, I would love to see trails connect Scott Road Farm to Community Park, crossing private property, but also to allow trails along the Scott Road Farm. And what's preventing that right now from it would be
The hunting.
no, not the hunting, the crep
Crep.
use. Like right now, the standard is during the hunting seasons, the trails are only open Sundays. And the effort to have more trails there go forward, I would have no problem with, partnering with the Indian Conservation Lookout Club, just for maintenance of the land and whatnot, because, again, I had a really good experience with them, and what I saw was stewardship, high-quality stewardship. So, I just want to make sure I throw the trail component into the discussion also, at for some future use.
But the problem is, right now, we have it,
We have a lease.
we have voted on not letting anybody do
Oh, correct.
anything there
No,
for a whole
that's what I'm
year.
saying, down the road, like off in the future.
I don't know what Crep's policies are on people hunting or things like that. We've worked with Crep before, our club has. We don't hunt our club. It's basically a wildlife sanctuary is what that is. But we've worked with them before. I would have to check on their policy or something. I'd like to maybe investigate that. Maybe we could work with them, something like that. And you said that the Boy Scouts of America, they go out there and camp. We've also worked with them in the past, and we're trying to work with them again. We have about 20 acres of mostly open land, and that would be an option for them to maybe move over there to our property.
Do you have a problem with waiting until our year of waiting is done?
I
Maybe we
mean,
can work on this. You can check with Crep and see what they need for
Personally, I'd like to do it as soon as possible. I mean,
Just
I,
don't take
you know, I understand things take time and everything, but I think sooner the better.
Do you have any more questions, Mr. Ritz?
No, I don't. No, the only thing with that is we did vote on it August 6th in order to revoke
Yeah.
it. I don't think we can just simply do it. It has to be brought forth the
Yeah.
public comment. You know, it'll be at a publicized meeting, and it could be months down the road anyway.
Commissioner Buckman?
Mr. President, I would be comfortable carrying out the moratorium, at least right now, and kind of seeing with town staff how things work out through the fall season and winter. And before we kind of address this, I'm not, trying to blow this off. I
Sure.
appreciate your concern, sir.
Sure.
But I am concerned to let the policy of the moratorium go through and see how it works out basically through the course of this year.
Okay.
And have the staff, revisit the site and see how it looks basically over the next couple of months. Just kind of give it some time.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you
go
off. One more thing I'd like to add. That property's been hunted for a long, long time. There's a lot of, what we're talking about is just not deer, big game, things like that. We're also talking about small game, like the squirrels, the rabbits,
Yeah.
birds, things like that. There's a lot of deer on that road. I don't know if you go by there at night or anything. You got to really watch it 'cause deer are jumping out.
I get it.
The hunter, the role of the hunter, it's probably wildlife's best friend in a way. You have a piece of land can only carry so much. There's a carrying capacity, and if nobody's taking these animals, more people are going to hit them with their cars, things like that. So that's another concern, which it's not going to be taken care of because the hunting's been taken away.
I don't have a problem with the Indian Looking Out Club using it also, but I also think we should wait until we just made this vote in August to wait until this goes out and see what happens with the property also, and then when we get better organized and what we want to do and how we want to do that through the time that we have it moratorium on, and then you come back to us in July, because it'll be up August the 6th.
Okay.
So, and then that way we can maybe we can work out with the Boy Scouts using your property and all that stuff, and we can get everything, different stuff going on. That's how I feel.
Sure.
What I would recommend is doing that probably June, July, and also looking at your policy that we do currently have for fishing and hunting, and to see if we want to continue with the exceptions that were previously approved. I want to say it was 2009, but we can't seem to find it right now, that allowed for the exceptions, and take a look at the policy as a whole and move forward from there.
Okay. Because we have some policy changes we want to try to probably make
Okay.
before then.
Okay, and one more thing I'd like to add. This property is no different than any other property. You guys said about the people riding the four-wheelers, things like that. This is going to happen anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
This property being shut down this year, there's going to be people in there poaching. There's dishonest people, people that go in there and, illegally. Is another question, is anybody allowed on this property for any reason whatsoever?
I think
Well,
town staff.
Mr.
obviously
Stouter.
is-
Well, town staff, obviously, your police, your DNR, Boy Scouts, CREP, Stouter, whoever Stouter rents his cattle to, and he has somebody that comes and takes care of his cattle. Occasionally, we have contractors go back in there. That's off the top of my head of who has been back there.
Okay. As far as Mr. Stouter goes, I know he stays back. His house and his property runs kind of in that corner back by the dilapidated barn and things like that. There's a lot of cars that's been there recently, and I know they're not with the town. You see them on Sundays. I see them get out of their cars and walk back there. That's another issue. So I wanted to bring that up.
Up to
DNR.
contact DNR and maybe have our deputies run out by a couple times on Sundays and stuff now, make more trips out.
Like on the weekends, and I'll go by there on Sunday and I'll go by there Saturday. Like, for example, I hung the signs that say the trails are open Sundays only when we're talking about on the mountain. But I always check out down there. It's across from Mr. Sherrard's home as well, where one of the pull-offs is. And more often than not, I can tell when it's a cyclist because they'll have a bike rack on the back, or they'll have like for example, a wrap over the tailgate where they hang the bike over so it doesn't scratch up the tailgate. But other times when you're there, you'll see someone who very well likely is not a cyclist, and they could be hiking up on the mountain, but my hunch typically is they're on the land and they're fishing or something like that, trying to, take advantage of the opportunity. But, yeah, there is a lot of activity on the land, and again, I'll go to, between the hunters and trail use, and this is the argument that we, heard a while ago about access to the trails when we piloted that program, was when you have people on the land who are respectful to the land and are stewards for the land, you find that improper use diminishes. And the question was, who's going to police this? And you get people out there, and you say, well, you get people out there, they got a cell phone, they're going to drop the dime and say, hey, a bad actor's here, we need to modify that. And I think there's been some truth to that proven with the trail use. But the other side is, like Mr. Wayne said, there are always going to be bad actors out there. So I rest my case. No, so that's the thought.
I have no problem with your stewardship too. I look forward to that. I mean, it'd be nice if somebody could keep the place cleaned up and all that done, along with the Boy Scouts could help with that too. So I think after we get this moratorium finished with and we can work through a program, maybe we can get something with the cleanup and maybe somebody looking at watching the property and all that stuff like that.
Okay, and again, on your website and on the TV, it said we were trying to get sole hunting rights. Nowhere did I say that.
Okay.
So,
Alrighty, that's
yeah.
fine.
So, all right.
We understand.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you for waiting. Yeah.
Just let it die.
Alrighty, I think that was the last agenda item.
It was.
Now we need to set the agenda for the next town meeting.
Mr. Mayor, did you request a second meeting for this month?
Yeah,
Yes, and we're going to, if we could start with the, you want to start with the,
October
October
15th meeting.
15th?
Yes, please.
Okay.
go ahead.
We need to, the mayor would like to have a second meeting for October 15th for smaller items or that we have to do, because we have too much stuff for one agenda.
Correct. So for our second meeting, or for the second meeting in October, October 15th, staff would like to bring the approval of the new water and sewer lead operator for consideration. We would like to bring the proclamation for Municipal Government Works Month, November 2018, for consideration. It's something that we do every year. It helps us get our banner town recognition. I have discussed a forestry plan submitted by the state, and it's regarding the timber on the Upper Monocacy watershed. This is pending state availability if they can attend. Basically, there's about 220 some acres that could be, the mayor has worked very hard on this, of timber that could be farmed or should be farmed per recommendation of the state on the mountain. It's up Hampton Valley Road and Select Harvest. I believe it's the intersect near Hampton Valley Road. What's the intersection? Do you know off the top of your head? Okay.
Crystal Fountain.
And Crystal Fountain, maybe?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
All right.
Okay.
You have
It's not
anything?
clear cutting, it's Select Harvest. But it's just the plan the state has come up with, and we'd like to just bring it for discussion.
Just curious, well, I don't mean to ask too much detail at this point in time, but is it the state recommending it that a contractor do it, or would the state be doing this work?
I believe the state would be doing the work, but I do not have all the information